This is Kathryn host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life.
Hi, this is Kathryn Getzke. Thank you so much for joining today to the Hope Matrix. We are super excited to have with us today Sandy Marshall from Project Scientists. How are you today, Sandy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on today. I was talking a little bit earlier with you just about looking at STEM and young girls. I'm really excited to talk to you here today. I know there may be parents out there thinking about getting their girls in STEM. And as we look at hope and hopelessness, hopelessness is a consequence of any kind of discrimination or oppression. And you could suggest that girls and youth have been challenged, and especially girls when it comes to STEM. So it's a really hard space for girls to get in. And so I thought it'd be great to get you here talking today about just your work in STEM, what you see with girls, some of their challenges, and how we can overcome those so we can get more girls in STEM. So why don't we start by just, if you can tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got interested and involved?
Sure. So I am the founder of Project Scientist, and I started it when my daughter Ellie was 4 years old and had an interest in science. And I wanted her to have a summer program that built on that interest, and could not find anything out there. So started it for her with a couple of her teachers and some of her friends. And now we're a national organization, actually serving girls internationally through our virtual platform, but serving about 3,000 girls a year through our summer academies on university campuses, our year-round virtual academy, and our year-round virtual STEM club. But we serve little girls ages 4 to 12. At a young age, all kids have an interest in science, and it's an easy teaching tool. And so we grab them at that young age and hold their hand up through 12 and beyond. But I started it because I, was a kid that loved science. I loved the outdoors. And, some of my favorite memories of my childhood revolve around science and the outdoors. And I think that's, really where it all spurred for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so you said the ages for them are 4 to 12?
Right.
Got it. Great. And can you share with us any of the science or the statistics around STEM and girls in STEM and how it's kind of changing?
Sure. So I think one of the most prominent research projects is called the Draw Scientist Test. And it's been around for years, where annually they'll have 5,000 girls and boys draw a picture of a scientist. And you'll see most of the kids draw the same picture. It's an Einstein figure in a lab, a male, glasses, crazy hair, and beakers. And in the past, sometimes only 2% of the girls drew males and 0 boys. And that statistic has increased for girls over the years, and boys. More are drawing girls and women in a variety of STEM careers, but we're still behind in what girls picture a scientist is and what a scientist does, and what boys picture who a scientist is and what a scientist does. So that's why we exist, to grab, all kids at that young age and start to show as many females in the field that are excelling in STEM fields, and get girls to change their perception of that for themselves, and start to develop those long-term goals for themselves. Women make up over 50% of the workforce, and in STEM fields, it's less than 25%. In fields like engineering and computer science, it could go down to 8%. or even 2% when you look at African American women or Latino women.
Wow. Yeah, that's so low. And do you have a lot of African American and Latino women in your programs? And are you working to attract that kind of population?
Yeah, and it's increasing steadily. Last year, I think it was 18% of the girls we served were from African American households. And this year it's 25%. Over 65% of the girls we're serving in our year-round club come from underrepresented and underserved households. So that's up from 40% in years past. So I think it's partially based on the need, based on the inequity in education around COVID-19, and then also around the support. We're getting much more support from foundations and STEM companies to serve those under-resourced communities, which is, making our program so much more valuable for the girls' experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should take a step back and just so that our listeners know, what does STEM stand for in case those that don't know?
Yep. Science, technology, engineering, and math. And you may have heard STEAM. We do also do arts, but we keep that acronym simple with STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yeah, got it. And it's a really fascinating study with the male scientists. I hadn't heard that before. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So when we talk about hope, we talk about the upstairs and the downstairs brain, right? And so when we're in the downstairs brain, we're stressed, we're worried, we're afraid. When we're in the upstairs brain, we're creative, we're problem solving, and that's where really learning and creation happens. And so when you think about the young girls and going into STEM or interested in it, you can think about how afraid they would be if they don't think they can succeed and they don't have a lot of examples of people that they look up to that have done well in STEM. And so what are you seeing as the girls that come into your program? Are they dealing with a lot of the anxiety around being involved in this field?
Yeah, so we work with girls ages 4 to 12. We also work with women in STEM majors on university campuses. And then we also work with over 400 female STEM professionals annually. So we get a real variety of, what women and girls are dealing with in the STEM areas. We get a really great perspective. I think from our young girls that are in the program, a lot of time it might show up as anger. They are feeling like when they're working in group projects, especially if they're on like a robotics team, things like that, they're often pushed to be given roles of communication or marketing or writing, when the girls in our program are thriving in math and science and they want to do the hard work or the engineering, those things that maybe they've been stereotyped out of. And so I think that shows up a lot of times as anger of why, girls are just as smart as boys. And why do I have to fight for my, opportunity to do the engineering portion on the robotics club or to do the math part in this group work? Why do I have to fight for that? So, we try to help them and teach them to use their voice and that's just where we are. And why do you think that's where we are? What obstacles have the women you've met had to overcome? We go into growth mindset, and, just our hope is that this is where it is right now in society, but everyone's learning to be better and everyone is seeing, more women in the space and thriving and the value of diversity in the STEM space. So hopefully, when our girls are adults or when they have kids, this won't be a conversation anymore. That's our hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important that we address our feelings. So whatever they are, sadness, frustration, or anger or whatnot, but we don't use it in a way that acts out. Oftentimes that leads to violence against self or other people or addiction or kind of all of these things. But we use that anger to really inform us and then use it as fuel towards our passion and our purpose. And so it sounds like the girls in STEM are doing that, which is really inspiring.
Yeah. And they're, having to put in some extra effort to get creative, right? How do we, and I think they're also learning to help each other, right? So when there's other girls in the groups or whatever, to help each other as a network and build each other up and, allow each other to thrive.
Yeah, that's great. And do you have any suggestions for parents that are working with their girls and trying to, see some skills in their girls and are trying to encourage them to pursue this path?
Well, we have a partnership with Sci Girls, which is a PBS affiliate out of Minnesota, and they have strategies for girls in STEM. And so one of those, when you hear your daughters maybe saying something like, girls aren't as good at math as boys are, or, girls aren't as good at science as boys are, things like that, to, again, bring it up and ask them, well, why do you feel this way? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And to really explicitly call that out. And especially for our teachers are trained in this too. So in the classroom, when they hear someone say that, don't let that pass. Take that as an opportunity to have a discussion around why you might think that, and to start to, whittle away at those stereotypes that they have for themselves. The other thing with parents is they're the number one factor in a girl succeeding in STEM. So if you talk to any woman that is in a STEM career or a female in a STEM major, if you ask them, what inspired you or what kept you on this path, 99% of the time they'll say their parents, and 90% of the time they'll say it's their dad. Wow. And, that could be because typically it's males in those fields, but a lot of times the stories they'll tell you is, my dad always had me help him work on the car, or my dad, when he was fixing things around the house, always brought me in to help me do that, fix the heater, whatever. And that starts to build up girls' confidence and to see that, yeah, I can do this too. This is easy. My dad has an interest in this and he's interested in me having this interest. So that's the biggest factor, really. If you could at home just start to show your interest in your daughter's STEM success, that's what will carry her on through, college and her career success.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of leads us to in the discussion around, so to stay in our upstairs brain, we have to practice habits that kind of keep us there. So nutrition and exercise and these kinds of things, but then also encouraging the activities related to STEM, I think is so important in the home. So that's a really great point too. Are you seeing teachers do that in the classroom as well?
Yes. So I guess, can you repeat the question on that? I guess.
Yeah. Like are teachers encouraging the girls to do that just as much, do you think, in the classroom, to excel and that they can excel? And how do you think the classroom is kind of translating like what we know in the research and what, kids are drawing as it relates to their STEM, who they see, their scientists, and how are the teachers kind of translating that into girls, and girls can succeed? And, do you think they're adding to the challenges you have, or are they starting to shift with us?
I'm hopeful it's starting to shift. I haven't seen research recently, but when I started Project Scientist, that was one of the reasons why our model is to hire credentialed teachers that come from the classroom, because at that time, teachers are, really second to parents of inspiring girls in STEM. And the research was telling us that majority of the elementary school teachers were women. And unfortunately, the teachers that were in the space, a lot of women that were not comfortable in math and science. And so they were expressing those views in the classroom. And so that's at a young age, when you idolize your teacher at 6 years old and she says, I was never good at math, or I'm not comfortable in math, or I don't like math, that translates into the girls' minds that that's not a place for me. I'm a female, she's a female, she doesn't like it. That's not a place for me. So that's why we hire credentialed teachers, because we want them to get that training with us from Sci Girls, to learn that backbone, and then also to spend the summer seeing girls excelling in math and science. And so they start to change those hidden biases they have around girls, and especially minority girls in STEM. And so we know those teachers, we've, done, had pre and post research done with those teachers. When they go back into the classroom, they're using those techniques and those tools, and those biases are changed in their minds. It really needs to start in academia when teachers are learning about the field, and for them to start learning that when they're in the universities becoming teachers, really.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so important. And I think too, good for parents to know. I mean, that does impact saying things like, I'm not good at math or I'm not good in finance. Like those things impacts the kids at home. They're listening and they do take in kind of that bias. Do you have any suggestions for people that are single parents, or are there other ways for the young kids to get inspired? Or if there isn't a father at home, or since a lot of that comes from the kind of father figure that you kind of mentioned, the inspiration to go into STEM?
Yeah. And I think the reason I said the father figure, we believe it's just because traditionally men have been in that STEM field, right? So a lot of times you'll hear when women mention their father, say, oh, what does your dad do? Oh, he's an engineer, just because it's traditionally male dominated. So hopefully that's changing. Obviously, as we get more women in those fields, more girls will be saying, oh, my mom, because my mom is an engineer, or my mom's a computer scientist. So it's not that a single mom can't have that inspiration for their girls. The best way to do this, if you're not in the STEM field, or, obviously encourage their experience at home, but to point out those people, your neighbors, people in your church, people at your work that are in the field, people you see on TV. There's so many resources now, especially with COVID, of YouTube videos, and Sci Girls, I've already mentioned, is a great resource. They have videos of just women in the field. They're called, I think, mentor moments. And just 2-3 minute videos, you can see a woman that, looks like you in a field you're interested in, and see her thriving. So I think there's a ton of resources out on the web now where you can show women thriving in the field, and not celebrity women. These are not Nobel laureates, just the women next door. That's really what inspires girls, because it's attainable for them. It's relatable. So just really pointing out those women in your own neighborhood that are excelling in the STEM field.
Yeah, that's great. When we redid our curriculum, we did Hope Heroes. So to really show application of how people are using the skills, we did use celebrities because we learn a lot from that. But I agree. I mean, just in really all different areas, we need to have those concrete examples. So it's great that there are those resources, and we'll also share them in the summary of this, some of the research sources. And I think you have them on your website too, probably.
Yeah. And we, I think on our YouTube channel, you can see some, but this summer had over 400 female STEM professionals serve as our program's called STEM Superstars, but where they're telling girls about their education and obstacles they've overcome, and favorite color, their pets, anything that is relatable to the girls, and then, inspiring them in their STEM story and STEM journey.
That's great. When we talk about the other part of hope is, so we have positive feelings and then inspired actions. And we talk about creating SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So what kind of goals can young girls start setting if they want to get involved in STEM field?
So, if you had asked this pre-COVID, I think my answer would be different than now. Just because kids and families are under so much stress right now. And I think it's changed to more of the present moment goals, short-term goals, than what we used to say with the long-term goals. So pre-COVID, you would be, take an assessment or hear from a variety of careers, and what do you want to be? Okay, then let's back it up to what major that would be. And let's back it up to, where do you want to leave your home community to go to college, or do you need to stay there because you have to take care of your little sister, or, what's your family life like, what can your family afford? But now I think having a long-term goal for yourself is great. And, idolizing some women that are in the space and having that outlook keeps you on track. But now with COVID, we're really focusing on the present. Like, what are your top 3 goals for today? how can you get through today? and let's just start there. And, how are you taking yourself physically and mentally? What are you accomplishing? What you need to accomplish in school? Are you communicating with people? Are you getting out of your house or somehow virtually having some interaction? Really focusing more on the mental health and social emotional with COVID than stressing us out on those long-term goals. Pre-COVID, we would focused a lot on math because any of our female STEM professionals you bring in would talk about math, and you just need to get through it. I mean, if you excel at it, phenomenal. That's great. But don't turn off a STEM career just because you're getting C's or you just need to get through it. Get through it. That's fine. And you can still have a career in STEM. But, the common denominator with the careers in STEM is that you do need to focus some effort on math and, have that be, backbone for you. I don't know if that answers your question, but, we're sort of shortening those goals to let's talk about today and getting through today and, being as healthy as we can just in the present. Did we break out?
Yeah, that's okay. We're good.
Do I need to repeat anything?
Just say, and getting through today. Hold on. But let me.
Might have been mine.
Yeah, just say it.
And getting through today and being present.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we know about goals. Like a lot of time goals change, and it's our ability to adapt to the changes or to, we have to set new goals. If the goals feel too big, we need to chunk down the goals. Another thing that's really key to hope is not internalizing failure. So I think really important in this population. I mean, if they fail at a math test, it doesn't mean they are a failure. It means something on the way to doing that test failed. And so how can you deconstruct do I need to find a study partner? Do I need to get a mentor? Do I need some tutoring? Do I need, more support around that? So there's always room for growth. And, again, I think really important not to internalize that and to just figure out where in the process that why the failure came about. And it isn't a reflection that they won't ever be good at math or can't be good at math. It just, they may need more kind of support around that.
I should have mentioned that actually. So yeah, key to our program is the failure. And in science, you celebrate failure because that's where you learn the most. When things fail, that's where you're getting your key learning. So, we have a year-round STEM club that we're doing. So virtually 300 girls across the country every Wednesday are doing hands-on activities with our teachers. But every Wednesday they're failing. I mean, they're learning what works and what doesn't work. And that is a goal of ours, is to become comfortable in failure and to overcome those fears of, what's the worst that can happen, right? So that's all definitely part of Project Scientist.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that's a lot of our research around the world shows that kids that fail on tests, they do internalize that. And there are a lot of suicides as outcomes of performance in school, when really we do need to just learn from that and learn how to change, our ways of getting where we want to go and how to learn and adapt from that. And that actually serves us all very well. So yeah, it's an important part of the work. We talked a little bit, about a network and creating a network. I think it's important both for kids and for parents, but for young girls as it relates to STEM, and that they have other people they can talk to and kind of get support from. Where have you seen that to be either in school or out of school? Or you mentioned some clubs, and is this publicly available? Can any kids join?
So hopefully most of our schools have some sort of a STEM club or a robotics club, things like that. Again, we are proponents in all girl type clubs just at that young age, because we want girls to feel empowered to do all of the positions on a robotics club, for example. But through Project Scientist, it's been interesting going virtual because the networks have completely broadened for us. Whereas girls used to come on our university campuses, which are in their neighborhoods. They'd meet girls outside of their schools, but they're from the same communities typically. But now they're working with girls from across the country and even internationally, where they're seeing girls that are like them in science and math, yet they're living in Brazil. And so the thing going on with that and broadening work and understanding that, we're more alike than we are unalike. And even as we, work across the borders, girls are experiencing some of the same benefits, frustrations, and things that you're experiencing here. So that's been exciting for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was so inspired by the work that you did as COVID came about. You've been doing so much research and in person, as you mentioned, in person kind of programs on the ground for so many years, and you literally took all of that and created online programming for the girls and did really well in adapting it. And that's, the research around hope so supports that. It's our ability to navigate through these challenging times, to take care of ourselves, number one, but then to be able to come up with new pathways to goals. And I mean, I would suggest your goal is to educate and empower girls as it relates to STEM. And so your ability to really navigate and create kind of new programming online in a way that's kind of meeting the needs of girls was really inspiring for me to kind of see. How was that process for you?
Well, it was exhausting. I don't know that I want to do it again, but I'm glad that we made the decision and we took the risk early on in March to say, we're not even going to plan for in-person. We're going to go to virtual, because it allowed us some time to focus and really put in the effort to make it a really great program. Whereas some of our peers in the space were straddling both, trying to plan for in-person and also a virtual, and unfortunately not getting to do very well. So I'm just glad that we did that. But it was, no sleep for months, because I think our team we're all moms of girls and we're all passionate about the product and the family. And we wanted them to have an experience, this summer as good as the in-person experience. And so it took a lot of creativity and, tenacity. And I think the pieces I'm most proud about is that we were able to get all the supplies delivered to the girls each week. And so, really looking at equity for our girls, and all they needed were, scissors or pencils, and everybody had the supplies. And then also looking at technology, anybody that needed an iPad or service, we found a third party. And so we rented iPads and Verizon service. So everybody had the technology they needed. And then bringing back our teachers was exciting as well, because some of them had experienced teaching virtually in the spring. They wanted to learn more and build up their skills over the summer. And so we know our teachers learned a ton this summer and brought that back to the classroom this fall, where most of them are teaching virtually again. So, and the parents liked it so much that we now have that virtual STEM club. So it's exciting to keep going down this path and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So will you keep the virtual learning program moving forward beyond, when
Yes.
in class? Yeah, that's amazing. And I would think too, the international exposure and collaboration, so powerful for young girls around the world to really be engaging with each other as it relates to this space.
Yeah, especially with the topics they're, everyone's interested in right now, climate change and AI, and, it's great for them to hear the perspectives around the world.
Amazing. So, and just kind of wrapping up, is there anything else how can people learn about your program, get involved? Find out more about the work, support your organization. I mean, definitely
Yeah, projectscientist.org. We serve girls ages 4 to 12, and we just opened up, if you want to join our STEM club, we just opened up signups for that. So you can sign up for, I think, a month, up to 4 month membership for January through May. And we'll be launching the summer lab signups probably around February. Right now, we are trying to attract donations. So as I mentioned, 65% of the girls we serve come from under-resourced households. And your support, you can sponsor a girl to be part of a club, which we'd love your support for that. And we're always looking for STEM companies. So if you work at a company that is focused on one of the STEM industries, we are doing virtual expeditions. We're having female STEM professionals as STEM superstars. So we're always looking for engagement in that way, and would love to talk to you more. And I just think, for parents, we'll get through this, and for the girls, we will as well. And we're here for you. And, it's just day by day.
That's right. Yes. Day by day, sometimes minute by minute.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sandy. It was so great talking to you and so good to see you. And thank you to all the listeners for joining in. projectscientist.org. Definitely check it out and sponsor girls if you can. I think you heard the statistics, and girls need your support in excelling in this field. And Sandy has been a true leader and so inspiring. So yeah, thank you all so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having us. Congratulations on your podcast.
Thanks.
So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out the shinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Heroes, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course, so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.